Welcome back to the Grease Goblins Rereads channel. Today's video we're doing Arya VIII. Now, Arya VIII is a weird chapter to me because I think it's probably of her Harrenhal arc, and probably even I would say in the early parts of this book, this is probably one of the weaker chapters for me. It is a really short Arya chapter. It's kind of like a bridge chapter in terms of what's going on in Harrenhal. We're kind of going now to post Tywin being in Harrenhal, all that kind of good stuff. So let's get into page 411. Chaos and activity fill the castle as preparations for Lord Tywin's departure reaches their peak. Supplies like wine, flour, and arrows are loaded onto wagons, and smiths work on weapons and armors. It's a really busy time because, well, the Lannisters are moving out. They're going to war. They're trying to finally strike back into the West as Robb is terrorizing the West. We know how it's going to go down, but for someone like Arya, she has no idea. But this is a huge moment for Arya because Arya is thinking, oh crap. Wait, all these people that I want dead are leaving. What am I going to do? I have these names and I've only named one of them. That's something Arya is going to struggle with in this chapter. And this is one of those chapters where who knows how the story could have changed if Arya had named different people. Male shirts are cleaned by being rolled in sand across the yards, horses and mules are shoed, and Wyse's women mend and wash dozens of cloaks, while everyone highborn and common gather in the sept to pray, as war is once again upon us. Now, we haven't really seen any major battles from Tywin's camp this book, right? And Tywin hasn't really fought in many battles at all, outside of the Battle of the Green Fork, which was not necessarily a battle at all. It was more of a kind of a distraction of what was going on. And so kind of the Lannister forces are a lot like, and in my opinion, the Tyrell forces. They haven't really experienced true battle yet at this point. Like, yes, they did defeat the Tullys early on in book 1, but I mean, it really wasn't a fair fight. They were completely outmatched, and you kind of feel that in the way like certain characters like Adam Marbrand are kind of worshipped in this chapter, or the way people are kind of reacting to the Lannisters leaving. Outside, tents are being struck, cook fires are put out, and weapons sharpened one final time. The air is loud and tense with the sounds of horses, shouting lords, cursing men-at-arms, and quarrels among camp followers. As Arya finally realizes Lord Tywin is finally marching out, Sir Adam Marbrand leads the first wave, leaving a day early with a dramatic flair. It kind of reminds me of the way it's described in the book of like Faramir in the movies in Return of the King, where you see all these, women are throwing flowers to the Knights of Gondor as they go out to try and somehow to retake Osgiliath. A lot of that kind of feels the same here as Sir Adam Marbrand, this beautiful looking knight that everyone describes as, and people are like weeping that he's leaving, all this kind of stuff. Feels very similar. He rides a copper-maned red courser wearing bronze-colored trappings to match his cloak and burning tree sigil. Some women weep at his departure as Wyse describes him as Lord Tywin's most daring commander and a skilled horseman and swordsman. He's a great outrider. Jaime is going to use that in the future, and Sir Adam Marbrand does seem to be very competent. Now, is he as good as he's being talked up to be? Still remains to be seen. But let's get into page 412. As Sir Adam Marbrand and his men ride out, Arya watches with hatred, hoping they all die, knowing they're going to fight her brother Robb. Arya doesn't necessarily hate the people that they are, but she realizes this force is being sent out to stop only one person, Robb. And right now, Arya has just heard that Robb is getting great victory. She doesn't know exactly because there's a lot of rumors flying around. But either way, for the Starks to win this war, people like Adam Marbrand are going to have to die. She's heard scattered rumors in the camp that Robb burned Lannisport, captured Casterly Rock, or is attacking the Golden Tooth. Something significant has happened, and this is a lot of times how news spreads. It starts maybe as the truth, and it just gets more and more exaggerated to the point where you hear people saying Casterly Rock has been taken, and that's one of the reasons Tywin has to act. It really plays well into Robb's plan, because Robb knows that Tywin cannot just let Robb go rampant on the Westerlands, right? He needs to respond. It's the same idea of why Robb eventually was going to want to go back north to reclaim it, because people are going to look at you as being weak if you can't even defend your own people and your own capital, for instance, if Robb was to ever take Casterly Rock. It's the same idea here. And so it's really interesting the way George foreshadows something that we're going to see Robb have to struggle with very shortly. Arya is kept busy running messages all day for Wyse, some even taking her outside the castle into the chaotic camp. She considers escaping by sneaking onto a wagon or blending in with camp followers, but fears Wyse's threats. And that's the issue, right? Even in all this chaos, Arya has easily her best opportunity to escape, right? Just blend into the crowd of people that are leaving. She's already outside of the gates of Harrenhal, but something keeps her there. It's this manipulation and abuse that Arya has been done by. It's the same idea of like Theon, for instance, with Ramsay later on. Now that's much more an extreme case, but same idea. Even when presented with chances to get freedom, they don't take them because of their abusers, and that fear overtakes their courage, or I guess their ability to escape. Whis warned that he would take any runaway that was found to Vargo Hoat, the crippler, who would cut off their feet, a little foreshadowing and wink wink as to what we know he will do later on. Arya thinks escape might be possible if Whis were dead, but she's too afraid to act around him. He doesn't know she can read, so Arya peeks at his unsealed messages. None are important, just mundane instruction, things like having a debt or running like a message to get swords or all this other stuff that's not really that important to Arya. Arya's looking for like information, battle strategies, things of that nature, which you're just not going to find with somebody as low level as Whis is currently. One message was about a gambling debt. When she read it aloud to the illiterate knight, he tried to hit her as Arya dodged, stole a drinking horn, and escaped. Now, one thing I will say is interesting. A knight can't read, but Arya actually can. That's a really big red flag. People, especially if they are like the poorer or working class, being able to read in A Song of Ice and Fire is like unheard of. So it's one of those things where Arya should really be trying to keep this a secret that she can't read, but I don't blame her using that to her advantage to understand what she's walking into, right? Like I would be the same way if I was sending all these messages to people. I would want to know, like, what is their reaction going to be? You know, all that kind of stuff. Whis was impressed with her and rewarded her by promising to share a roasted capon for supper. And we know that this is not going to happen, but it's just more of that, like, mental abuse. You know, treating Arya like she's a dog, just be getting the bare minimum of food. It's the same thing. Like, I think what's great about A Clash of Kings is it foreshadows so many events to come, and it really does a great job in the way it does that. It gives its messages off, its foreshadowing, while progressing the story. I just love that in here because it feels so much like what Theon goes through, but just in a larger extent when we go to Theon. Arya searches for Jaqen H'ghar to give him another name before her enemies leave for battle, but can't find him in the chaos. She finally learns from a gate guard that Jaqen and the others serving Sir Amory Lorch are staying behind. Sir Amory had been named Castellan of Harrenhal. And this is what I will say, if you're Sir Amory, this is not a nice thing to get, right? Yes, Harrenhal is this huge castle, all that stuff, but you're being left behind in the Riverlands, surrounded by enemies, and especially if Tywin goes back into the west, the likelihood of holding Harrenhal maybe isn't the best, especially when the people in the area don't like you, right? The Bloody Mummers, including Vargo Hoat, are also staying to forage, as Jaqen won't be leaving and Arya still has time to claim the 2 deaths owed to her. Another thing, we know Vargo Hoat and Sir Amory Lorch do not like each other. You just see the writing on the wall that there's going to be conflict, and maybe that's why Tywin leaves the 2 behind, right? They are the most dispensable. They aren't as great as warriors and things of that nature, especially the Bloody Mummers, who are good for fear, and Lorch as well. He's kind of leaving his kind of fear puppets and animals behind. Getting into page 413, the Mountain is set to leave with Lord Tywin and lead the van in battle, meaning Arya's enemies, Dunsen, Polliver, and Raff, will soon be out of reach unless she can get Jaqen to kill one quickly. Arya is seeing her chance for vengeance, flying out of her control. And that's one thing that Arya is struggling to do. She's struggling to have control of her life and getting vengeance, all this stuff. And she doesn't even really think, like, maybe she should be having Jaqen kill Tywin, kill Cersei, kill Joffrey, all of that stuff. It's not that simple, right? Because there's a lot of personal things. How is Arya going to survive Harrenhal if she doesn't kill certain people? There's a lot of Catelyn in Arya in this chapter, in my opinion, especially the way that her emotion overcomes her and that ability of just surviving. A lot of that, like, I know we don't really look at Arya and go, oh, she gets more of the Tully side than the Stark side. But I do think every once in a while with Arya, we do see a little bit of Catelyn shining through her. And I think this is one of those moments. And what I think is great, because I think we will see Catelyn and Arya, back together in Winds of Winter if we ever get the book. It will be really interesting because we never really see Catelyn with her daughter Arya in the beginning of A Game of Thrones. It'll be interesting to see how they reunite if they do. That afternoon, Weiss sends Arya to the armory with a note saying Sir Lionel needs a new sword. The armory is hot and loud with hammering and forges blazing as Arya spots Gendry working, sweaty and focused. Gendry at this point has probably worked more than anyone here, especially in terms of warfare and almost all the Lannister host leaving Harrenhal. Gendry pulls Arya aside and warns her that Hot Pie suspects she shouted Winterfell during the fighting at the Holdfast. And this is really important because who would actually say something like that? And especially where Arya came from, King's Landing, it would imply she has some connection to the Starks. Something Arya desperately does not want to come out, at least for now anyway. Gendry says he covered for her telling Hot Pie she only yelled, "Go to hell," and insists she say the same if asked, which I gotta say for Gendry, that's very clever, right? It's kind of similar wording-wise, go to hell, Winterfell. Like, you can see where in the heat of battle you maybe could misconstrue that. It's a very good cover-up and lie by Gendry. Arya agrees, knowing she can't risk revealing her identity, but she briefly considers giving Jaqen Hot Pie's name out of spite. Which is kind of crazy, but given how dire the situation is for Arya, you can totally understand it. Gendry fetches Lucan, who complains about wasting a good sword on Sir Lionel, and gives Arya a long sword to deliver. Arya lies and says she'll pass on the insult, as she knows better than to provoke Weiss, but Arya feels this sense of control now. Arya, when she's been captured, she's felt small, like she doesn't really have any power or influence over her life. She feels kind of like a trapped mouse that she compares herself, or kind of like a slave. But with the Jaqen stuff, she's starting to regain some of that. And even here, when given a sword, she contemplates, maybe I can survive if I'm able to get a horse. She's very clever, maybe she can get out. Though heavier than needle, the longsword gives Arya a sense of strength and confidence. She reflects that while she might not be a water dancer yet, she's not a helpless mouse either. A mouse can't wield a sword, but she can. Arya's starting to regain that confidence. Now, it's not fully there, but she's still starting to grow. As we get into page 414, Arya considers escaping Harrenhal by pretending to deliver a horse and sword to Sir Lionel using the paper Weiss gave her as a cover, which is incredibly clever. There's so many reasons as to why Arya would be such a great faceless man, and why Jaqen sees it in her, is things like this. You know that most people can't read. Outside of like higher lords and ladies, most people don't read. And so if you have a piece of parchment or a piece of paper with writing on it, people are going to look at you and go, oh, this is official stuff. And they're not going to question you as much. Arya's really smart to think about stuff like that. She realizes she doesn't know what Sir Lionel looks like or where to find him, and fears being caught, especially by Weiss, who has threatened mutilation. That's the other part of it, right? So even though you have this good idea, Arya doesn't know Sir Lionel. Like, if they pushed her or questioned her on, him needing a horse, she wouldn't be able to give good answers. As she hesitates, a group of archers pass by, talking about Robb Stark. Some mock him, while others fear his rumored wolf-like power and giants from beyond the wall. All of these men are hearing all these different things, that Robb is like a warg who turns into a wolf, or that he has these northern powers with him and magic, because, again, as Tyrion mentioned in one of his earlier chapters, people will think, oh, this is incompetence. People will cover up incompetence with it had to be trickery or magic because, well, Robb has had far less men in every single battle that he's fought so far and yet has won. And so the Lannisters and their men are trying to figure out, how is that even possible? Arya silently sides with her brother, thinking they should all run. Tywin, the Mountain, Sir Adam, Sir Amory, and Sir Lionel, because Robb is more wolf than man, and so is she. And interesting, it's a nice little nod to their connection with the direwolves, and it's Arya projecting, hoping that Robb can do what she can't. Suddenly, Weiss appears, grabs the sword, and slaps Arya hard, making her bite her tongue and taste blood. Arya and her little bit of rebellion, his spin stopped just like that. Just because she didn't get to the sword on him in exact quick time and all of this stuff, he slaps her. Right after Arya just did a good thing for him and was all praising her, you see that abuse, it's still there. The momentary feeling of power and identity vanishes with the blow, replaced by pain and helplessness. Weiss berates her again and sends her to the brewhouse with a threatening message, shouting after her to run if she wants to eat, and warning her against getting lost. His earlier kindness about sharing a capon is instantly forgotten, replaced by cruelty and control. Again, They butter you up at times when you do things that they really like, but all of that is forgotten instantly when you do something wrong. Remember, Rhys is still very abusive towards Arya and all these other people. As we get into page 415, Arya, determined that Wheeze will never hit her again, runs towards the brewhouse. Arya's emotion is starting to come to the front of her brain, and also her ability to survive. She knows if Wheeze is gone, her life will become much easier and her chances of survival will increase. But she's also not thinking about it from in terms of, if you want to get the most done for your family, well, maybe you should have Tywin and Cersei or Tyrion killed. But under a stone bridge, she encounters Rorge and 3 other men wearing Sir Amory's Manticore badge. Rorge mocks her with crude and threatening language, reminding her of past abuse and threatening more. You know, the referencing back when Arya was kind of sticking up to them while they're in their little cage thing, and now the roles have reversed. Arya is powerless, and these men have all the power. Arya holds her ground just long enough to claim she's looking for Jaqen H'ghar with a message. And where Rorge had been, threatening her with sexual assault and all this other stuff, at the mention of Jaqen, he seems to go a little bit scared, a bit fearful. It shows you Jaqen is a lot more than he's pretending to be. He has men that are this horrific on edge. Rorge then tells her Jaqen is in the bathhouse. As Arya runs to the bathhouse and finds Jaqen soaking in a tub, attended by a serving girl. Though she approaches quietly, Jaqen somehow notices her, explaining he can hear even soft sounds like footsteps on stone. It's something that Arya herself is going to go through when she's blinded. All of her senses become much more heightened. She's able to hear and smell things that she wasn't able to do before. It's all of that learning and things that Jaqen is trying to kind of teach Arya to then kind of test her to see if she'd be a good faceless man. Arya, without saying any other words, leans in and whispers the name Whis to him. Jaqen responds coolly, saying he'll attend to this lord at his leisure, then flicks hot water at Arya playfully. Again, Jaqen doesn't want to be suspected of something, and so he just kind of ushers her away and acts like it wasn't a contract to kill someone. Arya, in my opinion, has an interesting moment, because in terms of for herself and her own wellness, this is a great name, but in terms of Arya's goals, maybe not so. Maybe she has a Catelyn moment. You can understand why she gets rid of Whis, but in reality, maybe she should use that name on somebody different. Arya continues on to deliver Whis' message to Tuffleberry in the brewhouse. The brewer is furious, insulting Whis, and threatens to report him to Lord Tywin, though he still promises to send the barrels soon. As we get into page 416. Whis does not take this message kindly, of course, even with Arya admitting the worst insults. Whis curses and threatens, but ultimately sends 6 men to fetch the barrels. That night's supper is poor, barley stew, stale bread, while Whis' new bed companion gets extras like cheese and a capon wing. And right after Arya had been promised better food, she's given bad food, and even worse, Whis eats the rest of the capon greedily, grease running through the boils on his face. He seems to almost be showing off in front of Arya. When he sees Arya staring, he calls her over, wiping his greasy fingers on her. And this is where Arya's like, oh, maybe he did remember. There was a little bit of meat left, and maybe he's going to give me a little. And then all of a sudden, he grabs her by the throat and slaps her twice. He threatens to gouge at her eye and feed it to his dog if she looks at him again, then shoves her to the floor. Arya tears her shift on a nail during the fall, and Whis demands she mend it before sleep. Again, Arya is psychologically and mentally being abused, along with the physical. It's all stuff we see with Theon. Right? Theon is somebody that is kind of like this with Ramsay, right? You see where he gives him like little dog treats, and then sometimes he uses that to punish Theon or to hurt him in some way. You see that with Arya. That night, as she sows the tear, Arya whispers names, her prayer for vengeance, beginning with Whis and continuing through all those she hates with the normal suspects. She drifts to sleep, hoping Whis will be dead by morning. Unfortunately, he is not. She is woken to the usual way, by Whis' boot. He reminds everyone that Tywin is leaving that day and warns the servants their workload will only increase. And this might be very surprising to many of them, given that, well, most of the men are leaving out. You don't have to be doing as much mending cloaks or, taking messages, all this stuff. But in a lot of ways, your work is going to get even worse because there's less people now to fix up Harrenhal and to make it an actual living place. Arya eats quietly, thinking to herself, as she won't be getting orders from Whis anymore. She lowers her gaze when Whis seems to sense her staring at him, and it seems to make Arya afraid, because Arya's thinking, wait, did Whis suspect my trap, that I have him named and he's going to die? Well, unfortunately for Whis, Jaqen is a facelessman, so it doesn't matter. But even Arya at this moment, when she knows she has Whis, that she's won, she still worries. Because what if Whis killed her right then and there, suspecting what she's plotting? Well, it wouldn't do her any good if Whis then died the next day. Later, she watches Lord Tywin Lannister depart Harrenhal from a window, noting how grand that his charger had been, and Tywin's ermine cloak, Sir Kevin looking nearly as regal beside him. As we get into the last page of the chapter, page 417. 4 Lannister standard bearers lead Lord Tywin's grand departure from Harrenhal, flying crimson banners with golden lions. Behind them march Tywin's lords and captains, displaying a vivid array of sigils: oxen, mountains, unicorns, ferrets, jugglers, and more. And last comes Sir Gregor Clegane in grey plate, riding a vicious stallion, as Polliver rides beside him, carrying the Black Dog banner and wearing Gendry's stolen helm. Arya feels regret. She's seeing all these powerful men going to confront her brother, and she realizes she made a mistake. She should have killed someone like the Mountain or Tywin. But it might not be too late. Maybe she can unname Whis and use her last name. She rushes to find Jaqen and changes her chosen name, hoping she's not too late. As she runs down the steps, the portcullis clanks shut, followed by a chilling shriek. Her opportunity seems to be gone, but even more importantly, she arrives to find Whis dead on the cobblestones, throat torn open. His dog stands atop him, licking and tearing at his corpse. A crossman kills the dog as it chews on Whis' ear. Onlookers murmur in shock as Whis had raised the dog since it was a pup, and many whisper that Harrenhal is cursed. What they don't know is that Arya is the ghost of Harrenhal. She's naming people to die. And it's very interesting because it all looks like an accident. It's why the facelessmen are so great at their jobs, is nobody suspects a single thing. Arya sees Jaqen leaning against the Wailing Tower, calm and casual, signaling her silently with 2 fingers against his cheek. Confirmation that her command has been fulfilled. So she has 1 name left, and Arya has gotten rid of her biggest antagonist. It's going to allow her to do a lot of things she's going to do throughout the rest of this book. And in a lot of ways, it makes sense for Arya personally, but like she thinks and regrets, it maybe wasn't the best choice of names. But thank you guys all for watching. I hope you guys all enjoyed Arya 8. I think of all the Arya chapters, it's definitely a little bit lower for me in terms of the importance of it, and I think just stuff for Arya as a whole, but a good, filler, bridging the gap chapter to get to her kind of final couple chapters with the Harrenhal arc. But thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.